Hi, Dr. Tejan. For my interview assignment, I decided to do part two, and I interviewed Chris Bailey about his forms of capital. I kind of touched on um, who he is, where he grew up, his family life, SES, gender, and race, and then how those things influenced his education. And I hope that you enjoy. Okay, so we'll just pick up kind of where we left off.
Okay.
So you said you moved to your grandparents, and like, I guess, is it okay if I ask what the reason was for you moving to your parents or grandparents?
Sure. I can't go into it too long because we'll be here
Forever.
forever.
That's
But
fine.
um, there were some child abuse issues
Mm-hmm.
when I was younger. Super young. I had like a newborn, and so I
Oh,
came down
wow.
here as a foster kid, pretty much. So I spent I spent like a year in foster care, and then my grandparents got custody of me.
Mm-hmm.
So
And then you were able to live with your
yeah.
grandparents. And after learning this about Chris, the first thought that ran through my head was that this can only, I mean, this kind of event to, even though he was young when he experienced child abuse, having to go through the foster care system and knowing that that is your background surely has to have some kind of effect on you. Chris said that he didn't really think it had an effect on him. However, later on, he was kind of talking about how he has this lone wolf mentality, and he blamed it on being a Sagittarius. However, I think that perhaps this kind of experience has affected him in a way that maybe he is a lone wolf, and that kind of gives him the mentality of, well, if nobody's going to do it, I am going to be the person to do it, and maybe has pushed him to be the hardworking person that I know that he is. How did your family's SES have an influence on your life? I guess even, I mean, you probably don't remember this, but maybe you have some idea from when you were a baby as well, when you lived with your mom, and then also maybe with your grandparents.
Hmm. Well, like my written response said, not a whole. It to me didn't make much of an impact. I
Mm-hmm.
think societal, it sure did.
Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't really cognizant of things I didn't have, or at least I didn't let it
Mm-hmm.
affect me. I lived an okay life. We were like lower middle class. We weren't really poor or anything like that, but
Right.
definitely focused on things that you needed. There wasn't a
Mm-hmm.
whole lot of disposable income to
Mm-hmm.
like do, vacations
Mm-hmm.
and fun stuff that some more wealthy kids get to do. But I was okay. Like I didn't go to school like all depressed and stuff because I couldn't
Yeah.
go to World of Fun or something like that. I lived a fun life.
Mm-hmm.
The SES had little to no impact on how I
Mm-hmm.
viewed life, things like that,
Mm-hmm.
until I got older.
And
When
yeah.
you're young, you don't think those kind of things, but as you get older and you learn more about how some of those things work and the have and have nots and things like that, then yeah, you become a little more cognizant of that.
Mm-hmm. I found Chris's response to be very much so like a response that I would have. Growing up, I came from a middle class family like Chris did. And as he said, a lot of times kids don't always realize what they have and what other people have. It's a lot more when you get older and maybe you're the one footing the bill, or maybe around high school, kids become a little bit more cognizant of that. He did mention that something that is not in the clip, that he does not have any financial support from his grandparents for schooling. So he does rely on loans as well as scholarships. And I think that is something that maybe has a big effect on him from SES, even though he does not realize it. Religion has influenced your life. I know you talked about in your written response that you did go to church on Sunday, but maybe didn't have as much of an impact on you.
Well, it had an impact, but I don't think that it was just one of those things you did because you just did it.
Mm-hmm.
To me,
Yep.
that's how I grew up, or that's how I viewed it as I got
Mm-hmm.
older. When I was younger, like it was fun. I loved learning
Mm-hmm.
about the Bible and all this stuff, and but it was just like Sundays. It wasn't you. There was no follow up after that. When I got home, it's take off your nice church clothes and do whatever. And it wasn't like, okay, what'd you learn? Let's talk about religion. Let's talk about some of those things. And so, to me, it was just a thing you did because Sunday called for it.
So, digging into this aspect of Chris's life, to me, it kind of sounds like, yeah, religion has played a role in his life. However, maybe it does not drive him to do certain things every day. We talked longer about this than what is in the clip, and he kind of mentioned, that he really enjoys kind of the morals that you learn from going to church, but he doesn't always necessarily abide by them. I think a lot of Americans do this as well, where they kind of take bits and pieces of religion. But other than that, it did not really seem like religion was a huge factor for Chris in his life.
Yeah, racism is just a funny thing,
Yeah.
This country is something else.
It is.
How it's affected me is just you're just more aware of how race affects you. I know it's like a roundabout answer, but it's just like
No, it's true.
like when you're kids and stuff like that, like when you're really little. I mean, at least nowadays, I think that kids don't really think about that a whole lot. But then you get adults in their ears, and their viewpoints on things, rightly or wrongly, most of the time wrongly. And that just really affects people. And when I was a kid, I didn't think about that kind of stuff. But yeah, as I got older, you see stuff on the news, or you hear stuff from other people in society and things like that. You're like, man, it's kind of, and there's some differences there, some difficult differences to deal with. And so yeah, you're just more aware of things you can do. You're more on edge, I guess. I don't, and I hate to say that. Like I'm always thinking like, oh man, white people are out to get me and things like that. I never think that, but I mean, you're really aware of just how much race plays a part in everything that we do in this country, whether people like to admit it or not.
After interviewing Chris about race, I quickly realized that this probably is the factor that, besides gender, that affects his life every single day, almost every moment of the day. I think he talked about how maybe he didn't feel like he had a lot of discrimination. However, that kind of made me think about how we were talking about the Bluemont bubble that we live in, and I kind of shared that theory with him, and he definitely agreed that we at K-State, especially in the College of Ed, are pretty understanding and culturally responsive. He did, however, share sometimes with me that he was discriminated against due to the color of his skin. He has been people have yelled expletives at him while he's just walking down the street. He's been stopped by cops when he's walking down the street in broad daylight. If you know Chris, you know he is one of the nicest people you will ever meet. The first time I met Chris, he just came into the advising office and said hi to me because all summer long, we would wave at each other through the window, and neither of us knew who the other one was, but we both knew that we had a friendly smile, and so I can't imagine somebody just stopping him on the street for the color, just due to the color of his skin. I think that that is incredibly sad. Something else that he touched on was that a lot of times kids don't notice that. And something that we talked about in class, I believe it was today, was that kids are like sponges. And until they get these ideas filled in their head, they are an open book. And I would say most kids probably aren't, born racist. It is definitely something that you learn. And so I think that as a future educator, I have a privilege to help form these little minds and shape them into understanding people who have empathy and are able to put themselves in other people's shoes. Maybe two last questions. How have these factors from above influenced your education?
Like I said, I think that I've sought out more and just come to understand things a little bit better. I'm one of those people that I don't want just one piece of information. I like to have a full, rounded, well-rounded story on things. And yeah, the things that I've experienced have just made me seek more knowledge and how to make better decisions in life, so I don't fall into the same trap that people fall into all the time. You get one piece of information, you think that's how it is, and that's how
Yeah.
it's always going to be. But there's two sides to everything, and I want to be well informed. I just want to know more, how I can help more. There might be some kids that I deal with in the future that have dealt with some of the things that I've dealt with, or whatever. Um, so yeah,
So that's how it
yeah,
influenced you?
you know, I don't feel a certain way. Like I don't feel, I don't feel like sad or angry or anything like
Mhm.
that. Or I probably feel a little bit of sadness just because
Mhm.
people are
Mhm.
so silly these days,
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
for lack of a better term.
Yep.
So it hasn't affected me where I feel like hopeless or upset at the world and I don't want to do anything. It's galvanized me more than anything, just to be able to seek more knowledge to help more people and make a positive influence in life.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
yeah.
Nice. After talking to Chris about how all of these um, factors in his life have affected his education, I definitely came to the conclusion that his life and his experiences have pushed him to be the best that he can be, and maybe also that lone wolf mentality has pushed him to get his master's in counseling. He told me that he's 31 years old. On Wednesday, this Wednesday, he will be 31 years old, and that he never gave up when it came to his education. He might have taken a detour or two, but he has not given up, and I think there is something incredible to be said because coming from my background, my middle class white family, I was just kind of expected to go to school. My mom, she went back to get her degree and graduated in 2012. And my dad, he didn't go to college, but my stepdad did. And it was just kind of what was expected. I never had the thought that I wouldn't go to college. For Chris, that was very different. He was not expected to go to college. So when he did, um, people were proud of him. And then when he went back to get his master's, it's like he's almost going above and beyond when maybe that is kind of what is expected for me. Something else that he said in this clip that kind of resonated with me, it reminded me of the book that we read at the beginning of the semester where people will take one piece of information and think that that is the truth for everything. And that is very true where people read one article and they think that that is the law of the land and that's how it's got to be. So I think it's cool that his background has kind of opened his eyes to being well-rounded. And that's all that I have. I excluded the gender portion just for sake of time. I would say that gender was probably the second most important factor for Chris. However, he didn't have a lot to say about it. However, besides the fact that yes, gender has in fact provided him more privileges and opportunities than maybe a woman would have. He told me that he definitely does not support that and that it makes him angry. And he said that he definitely thinks that that anybody who doesn't agree with that should be angry because men and women are fully capable of doing all kinds of jobs and you shouldn't just label a person and put them in one box. I think that this time that I spent with Chris really opened my eyes. I knew Chris from work and I see him almost every day. However, I didn't know Chris. So it was really cool because Chris has always kind of interested me. Sometimes he can really keep to himself. So I thought it was cool to, get to know Chris and know his life experiences and know why he's here at K-State today and how he got here at K-State today. And it's just really refreshing to meet somebody like Chris who maybe had some odds stacked against him, even if he won't admit it. and really overcame that in the most positive way. He is such a positive person, and I think that that is something really special about him. And I hope that you enjoyed my project. I know that I surely did, and I will be seeing you soon, Dr. Tejan. Bye!